Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Rigell.
Thank you, Madam, and thank each of the witnesses today. I'm very grateful that you keep us safe, so thank you for being vigilant. You know, we know that those who want to harm our country they're tenacious and they adapt, and weapons are getting smaller, they're getting more lethal, and they're certainly becoming more portable. So I think we need to adopt somewhat of the mindset of our friends in Israel. Just, you know, every Israeli citizen has this keen sense of being observant. So toward that end, you know, we have the American Waterways Watch, and that's the equivalent of the See Something, Say Something campaign, and this is a program, of course, for boaters. But there is an important distinction between those two programs, and specifically, it's that there is no immunity granted for people who are on the nautical side for America's Waterways Watch, whereas they do have immunity on the See Something, Say Something campaign. So I could, I suppose, direct this to any of you, but Admiral, I'll direct it to you. Do you see any reason why we would not want to reconcile those two programs and give immunity to those who under reasonable conditions, you know, are suspicious of activity and report that same activity?
We have roughly 17 million recreational vessels in the United States. That's quite a Navy that I could leverage, but perhaps maybe one of those 17 million is an actor who means to cause harm to the United States. I would fully support such a measure so we can leverage that American Waterways Watch because they're the ones on the water. They're the ones that are probably going to first detect that anomaly because even our Coast Guard crews that rotate every 4 years may not have that local knowledge, but the local knowledge is absolutely critical in feeding that key piece of information.
So just based on what you just said, it's pretty clear then that you'd support just reconciling those two programs to give immunity to those who do the same thing on the water as those who would do something like that under the See Something, Say Something campaign.
Unequivocally.
Okay, thank you so much. Following up on a little bit different line here, you mentioned in your testimony the Joint Harbor Operations Centers set up by the Coast Guard and also, of course, the Navy. Now, in our own area, I have the privilege of representing Virginia's 2nd Congressional District, and you've been there, I'm sure. We have the largest concentration of Coast Guard personnel. It's just a real honor to have you in our area. But in that, the Joint Harbor Operations Center, as I understand it, is going to be, the Navy is no longer going to participate in that in 2012. So is that being done with your concurrence? Is that being done over the Coast Guard's objection? What is the Coast Guard's view of specifically the Joint Harbor Operations Centers?
I'm very familiar with that. First of all, we meet every year with the Navy staff, with the CNO and his staff at the 4-star level. And we were well aware that this was going to be a resource challenge. And I've served on 4 ships in Hampton Roads, and we've had a long-standing relationship with our Navy brothers and sisters in that port. So we're able to make that virtual connection. So we don't have a uniform member there, you know, in that Jayhawk. We do in San Diego, we do in Puget Sound, but that does not mean that the information flows. It's a 24-hour watch, and we're still able to push that information to the Navy. So we have a very rich collaborative relationship. We just do it now in a virtual environment.
All right, and so you sleep well at night, if I may phrase it that way, just based on that decision in Hampton Roads, and that we haven't really degraded our security as a result of that.
Not in the least.
Okay. Sheriff Garcia, thank you for being here again today. And I found it very interesting, though, the immense responsibility you have there in the Houston Port Authority. And I tell you, if I told our Norfolk Sheriff, Sheriff McCabe, that he had the same responsibility in Hampton Roads that you do, I don't know what he'd say. So I just am intrigued in the few seconds I have here, if you could help me to understand, it seems like so much of what you're referring to generally would be a federal responsibility. So to the extent that you're conducting federal operations, I mean, I'd say here, even as a strong fiscal conservative, we need to make sure that you're funded if, in fact, you know, you're really taking over some responsibilities, what we think to be traditionally federal responsibilities.
Well, thank you, and it is an incredible responsibility. I've always said since becoming sheriff of the community that It is the one area that does keep me up at night, making sure that we are doing everything possible to make sure that it's as safe as possible. But making sure that we do, we are providing a very critical operation. It does speak to the national security of our country. And so that's why having the necessary personnel to deploy there is critical. It's not something I want, it's something I need. And so conducting those operations and working as closely as we do with the U.S. Coast Guard and our other federal partners there, CBP, with the FBI, DEA, all the operations that we work very jointly there in that area is really speaks to a true national security effort that we are taking as much of the responsibility over.
Thank you. My time has expired.
Thank you.